My name is Patrick Earl Hammie, and I'm a professor in the School of Art and Design in the College of Fine and Applied Arts. I'll be sharing some works with you tonight of my own, and surprisingly enough, the size of the screen, they'll be to scale. So when you see them, they're pretty big. What do mythology, money, and masculinity have in common? They're examples of stories made real through our collective belief. And though they're only ideas, their effects are real and lasting. Paintings of people have been key sites for negotiating issues of identity and educating cultural norms in society for centuries. We've learned to form meaning around people, in part through the narratives, objects, and images of a privileged few. From viewing black bodies as exotic or threatening, to reducing women to narrowing aspects and fearing differing sexualities. I'm curious about storytelling, the body and visual culture, and subjects that explore the tensions between feeling and knowledge, power and violence, vulnerability and tenderness. My work examines personal and shared Black experiences and offers stories that expand our understandings. I use allegory and portraits across painting, drawing, and sculpture to explore cultural identity, emotion, and family by layering existing histories with new narratives. My projects invite viewers to consider the tales we tell and how we express notions of gender and race today. In 2015, I began my recent project, Birth Rose, after helping my mother through a stroke that limited her communication and feeling beaten by senseless reminders of how little Black lives mattered in America. I reflected on my mother's diminished voice and how I survived despite the statistics, and broadly asked myself, who carries our family story, and where are they culturally remembered? Black American families exemplify innovation, rebellion, and hope, defined through intergenerational acts of survival against institutional injustice. Too often, though, they've been framed by non-Black authors as destructive, unloyal, and broken, and used to inflict cycles of incarceration, negligence, terrorism, and killing. Birth Rose focuses on my family as a case study, using delivery, birth, and prophecy as rhetorical devices, and looks at Black familyhood's capacity to traverse fear, tragedy, and joy, and enrich culture. My painting, Untimely Ripped, for example, brings together many of these ideas. It pictures my mother and a team of surgeons delivering me via cesarean in an operating room. This fusion connects the cultural and critical valuing Black life, in particular, its premature ending, through depicting the business of its beginning. This scene of 5 female surgeons and mother bearing new life dialogues with more male-dominated paintings like Thomas Aiken's The Gross Clinic, and expands examples of medical professionals and women in art. The title is a reference to the cesarean-born character, Lord Macduff, from Shakespeare's Macbeth, who would foil the tyrant Macbeth would become. This allusion makes room to consider the coming Black body as both a symbol of hope or caution, depending on one's vantage. When I was young, my parents encouraged my drawing and exposed me to Black excellence through TV, books, and artists like Sly and the Family Stones, and my dad's record collection. My mom worked for the Southern New England Telephone Company, and my dad worked as a city foreman and gravedigger. I wanted to be an illustrator and animator, and learned a lot about art through Saturday morning cartoons, field trips, Sesame Street, and Reading Rainbow. I grew up between Connecticut and South Carolina in mostly white communities, and rarely encountered creative endeavors by people who looked like me or shared similar experiences outside of the home. I wasn't introduced to Black visual artists like Carrie Mae Weems or Romar Bearden until college. I began studying to become a K-12 art teacher, but shifted to studio art after learning how well I connected with others through my art. As a professor and artist, the university helps me find the time and resources to research and connect with underrepresented ideas, groups, and leaders, and to nurture greater numbers of these voices into positions than there were than when I started. Years ago, a group of young black art students attended an opening of mine in a city where black people have been historically dismissed, ignored, and disproportionately persecuted. Watching those students react to seeing themselves reflected in my work and talking with them later about what it meant to them gives me life and keeps me inspired in the studio and classroom. Art, media, and culture have grown more inclusive and more intractable since my childhood. Despite good efforts, expanding examples of underrepresented authors and subjects are still limited in public consciousness and education. When students walk into my classroom, my body is littered with stories that aren't mine, informed chiefly through representations of black masculinity in media. Through my art courses, students encounter difference and learn empathy for others. Meeting our land-grant mission, they learn how to be creative thinkers, critics, and community leaders who carry an important role in representing society's life cycle. My presence in art and on this campus reframes embedded narratives by providing communities with a personal account and differing ideas. I just completed a portrait of Albert R. Lee, an African-American man who deeply affected our community, commissioned by Chancellor Jones. Lee was hired in 1897 and rose to the position of chief clerk in the president's office, serving under 7 presidents. On top of his official duties, Lee helped black students find housing in the homes of black community members and get jobs. His work helped them become leaders in their field and their well-being on campus. When the Chancellor asked me for this portrait, I spent weeks thinking through compositions that could tell Lee's story. I collected black and white photos of him and personal accounts from his biographer, Vanessa Rollion. With so few pictures of Lee from his time, and none in color, I wanted his portrait to feel fresh and as if he lived today. I worked to bring his likeness into full color and avoided traditional formats. After deciding to focus on a large close-up of his head with rich royal blue color palette, I began the 5-month process of completing this large-scale portrait. I look forward to sharing this portrait in April during this unveiling ceremony in the Student Dining and Residential Programs building, where the portrait will reside. Portraits like Lee's, painted by artists like him, supported by institutions like us, help expand and add significantly to telling a coherent story from our time and inspire others to explore and share the rare and valuable stories. Thank you.